Hello.
Morning, Brent. How are you? Morning, John. Morning, Norma.
Maybe I'm turned off.
Morning, Lynn.
Yes, morning, Steve.
Turn on original sound. Turn on a microphone. What?
Morning, Debbie.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'll turn off original sound.
Everybody getting ready to enjoy this better stretch of weather we're going to have.
So what's going on today?
Looking forward to it. Morning, Dave.
Good morning, all.
Good morning.
Brent, are you still without your other half?
She's around here somewhere. Getting ready. She should appear shortly.
Chat. Okay, speakers view.
The other day she was out working in the garden with Lisa, and I went out to check on them, and they were both gone. And I thought the rapture had happened until I saw the golf cart was gone. So
Well, there are many ways to get to heaven, Brent. Golf cart may be one of them.
I don't think our old dump cart will be a long trip.
Is it warm and sunny around Indianapolis today?
Here, anyhow.
How's the corn, Steve? Got water on the corn?
We've had lots and lots of rain. The crops look very good. Start baling hay again tomorrow.
Sorry to miss that, Steve.
Big round bales from the comfort of an air-conditioned cab.
I'm gonna go out and come back in.
I mean, you
Leave the meeting, go back.
Hey, one summer was
Morning.
all.
Morning, Sue.
Good
when I
morning.
was a young pastor in Eastern Indiana back in 1978. Man, was that hot. For a city kid, it's like, why did I say, anybody needs help, let me know?
Great deal of meditation can take place as you're out in the fields.
When I was a child helping my dad in the hayfield, I lived all year long to help put up hay because I loved it so much.
I listened this morning again to the Father's Day and the Mother's Day events on YouTube, and I had forgotten that you drove horses and mules before you drove the tractor.
Absolutely. You may remember that I grew up on the back of a Kentucky Thoroughbred horse, racing around the pasture as fast as it would go.
I don't see an option to get to something else other than this. Turn on original sound.
Yeah.
Welcome, everyone. It's time to start. I know we'll probably have some others
Sideways.
join us.
Yeah, we got that.
Are there prayer concerns or
Huh.
things to share before we
But let's
No,
see.
go into
you-
some
your
centering
red line went
silence?
out of your mute down there at the bottom then.
Maybe you're muting me.
Pray for all our students, especially those going to college.
Ah,
It is orientation, move in, everything is so very different. And
Turn off original
there's just an
setting.
added level of stress to what would normally be a very stressful first separation time.
So this, that should be coming. See, really, this ought to be picking up us. I'm not hearing anything. Stop. What's this do?
Next Sunday
Select the
afternoon
webcam. Okay.
is
Select the webcam.
next Sunday afternoon is a celebration of life for Jody. I did not send
It's here.
links or email out. I don't
Select the microphone.
feel that they needed to participate, but
Select the
if
speaker. Use
let me
speaker
know.
to be okay to.
Could you repeat that, David? Dave, we didn't hear it.
To speaker and microphones.
I think I'm being out shouted somewhere.
There you go.
Next Sunday afternoon is Jody's celebration of life, and it's going to be broadcast out on GoToMeeting. And I did not send anybody any invitations because I didn't want anybody to feel like they should sit down and watch it or go to it if they didn't want to. So if someone wants to send me a message, I'll send you one.
Let's have a period of silence. I'm the worship leader this morning, and I'll speak out of the silence as I feel led. as I was getting ready for what I was going to say today, and then it was going to be on the Bible. And when I said that to Nancy, she kind of reminded me of something that Calvin Coolidge said. He came home from church one day, and his mother said, "Well, what the preacher preach about?" He goes, "Sin." And then she said, "What did he say?" And he goes, "He was again it." And so when I said the Bible, Nancy's like, so I said, "Well, I'm for it." But then, of course, as life often does, some things happened, and I changed direction. I grew up in an evangelical Friends church in Columbus, Ohio, as most of you know. We sang a lot. A lot of songs I liked. I liked the Easter songs with their booming "Up from the grave he arose," and I used to love "Let the Lower Lights Be Burning," and things that had some zip. "Victory in Jesus" was a fun one to sing. As Stan Banker once said, most of those songs were 90% emotion and 10% bad theology, but they were fun to sing. But one I never did like has been on my mind the last couple of days, and it's "His Eye is on the Sparrow." I just never cared for that song. Why should I, especially as a kid, why should I feel discouraged? Why should the shadows come? Why should my heart feel lonely and long for heaven and home? When Jesus is my portion, a constant friend is he. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches over me. Well, when I was young, I did not long for heaven and home. Heaven just didn't sound that much fun to me, especially as a kid, sitting around on a cloud or walking golden streets or whatever. But of course, that song comes from a passage in Luke where Jesus is speaking, and he says about trying not to worry. He says, "Are not 5 sparrows sold for 2 pennies? Yet not one of them is forgotten by God. Indeed, the very hairs of your head are all numbered. Don't be afraid, you are worth more than many sparrows." Well, in my old age, I know that the very hairs of my head are not that hard to number. But the song and the verse have been running through my mind since the other night when Nancy and I were sitting in the living room, and I was getting ready to head to bed. And we heard a kind of whack on one of the back windows. And once again, as we went to look, a bird had flown into one of the windows. And we looked down onto the deck, and it had knocked itself out, was laying on the deck. And it's like, well, I guess I should go out and check. And so I went through the kitchen and out the back porch. And as I came out the back porch there, one of our cats was approaching that bird, perhaps thinking it was going to have a snack. So I chased it away and picked the bird up, and it was really stunned. I picked it up and held it for a while. Nancy was still inside, mouthing words to me. I don't think one of them was "give it mouth to mouth," but I was blowing down its through its open beak, and its eyes were blinking, but it wasn't moving much. I kept stroking it and moving its little legs. But then the mosquitoes started biting me. So I decided, well, dare I trust that it's going to get better and set it here on the rain barrel, but the cats like to get up there. So no, I better not do that. I better take it inside with me into the screen porch. So I did, and Nancy came out. We're sitting there, and I was stroking it and turning it over and blowing in its beak some more, and it started blinking and closing its eyes more and more. So I thought, well, this is it. Now it's not going to be around, but I'll just sit here and hold this little bird. And then I was also thinking, why am I sitting here holding a little bird? I mean, this is, you know, who do I think I am? Opie on the Andy Griffith Show when he had to take care of some baby birds. But just when I thought, well, this is it, it closed its eyes for a long time, I started playing with one of its legs, and its little talons wrapped around my finger. And then it squeaked. And then it kind of moved around in my hand. So I thought, well, we'll see. So I set it down on the floor, and it just sat there. So I picked it up some more and held it for a while longer. And then it started chirping more and squirming around a bit more. And I thought, well, I wonder if it's safe to set it outside. It seems like it's recovering. So the cats were all on the back porch. So I went out the front door of the screen porch where some steps are, and thought, I'll set it down there. Well, they followed me. One of them did. So I had to chase it off. And I set the little bird down on the steps, and it just sat there and shook its head and didn't do anything. So I thought, well, once again, I'll pick it up. And as I reached to pick it up and started to touch it, it started, and then it just flew across the driveway into the center island where all our trees are and sat out there chirping. Of course, Nancy was a little silly about it. She goes, oh, that I was her hero. I saved this bird. I didn't do anything for the bird except hold it and petted it. And thought, what difference does that make in a woods full of birds where they drop over every day? And then I was thinking about these verses and the song, his eyes on the sparrow, and I know he watches me, and that we are worth more than sparrows. But he says, are not 5 sparrows sold for 2 pennies, yet not one of them is forgotten by God. Now, I wish Dale Graves was here in some ways. I mean, I wish he was here for lots of ways, but one of them is quantum physics. How in the world can all this happen? You know, God, I think, is something like quantum physics. I can't figure it out, but it sure explains a lot of stuff. How so much can happen all at once, and yet everything matters intensely. And so God can remember the 5 sparrows sold for a couple pennies, and knows how many hairs are on my head, and knows what is happening all around this globe and the universe all at one time, and holds them all in love. And so while that, my love, at least for a short time, for one little tiny sparrow, may not seem like much, it did remind me of the great love in which we are all held. Sparrows, kitty cats who would like to eat a sparrow, those who are sick, those who are hurting. And in times such as these, to be reminded that a constant friend is he, as the song says. For his eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me and thee.
Your comments reminded me of many things, but growing up, our dad was a mathematician and physicist, and a very practical person. And after lamenting the loss of a certain number of items in the garden, he said, God must have loved the birds. He sure made an awful lot of them. And then living in this house now, I've experienced the same problem you have of birds. Where I grew up, large expanses of glass, doors, windows, had a porch or an awning or something over it. So we didn't have a lot of birds flying in. So I'm living here and have a lot of that. So I figured, did what everybody does these days, go to the ultimate source, Google, for how I can address that. And, putting strips in front of the windows. Well, I didn't want just plain old strips. So I had, and we also were raised on the notion of frugality. So I took those tops that have a foil covering on the top that for carryout items, basically cardboard covered in foil. So you put a top on it and you carry it out. So I had some of those sitting there from an event that I'd been part of, and I thought, well, I'm going to recycle these. So I just cut spirals, and hole punch and fishing line, and hung them on cup hooks out in front of the windows. And it does a great job. But the side thing that was interesting is, my gosh, these have lasted for years, and it's just cardboard covered with a thin layer of foil. But now that we're all working or staying home more, the additional benefit is throughout the day, as the sun changes course, I'm constantly getting different variations of light. And it just helps me pause and reflect on things that are much more important than whatever I'm doing in front of this device on a daily basis. So from a little notion of trying to protect the birds, I'm reminded on a daily basis that there is a light out there far greater, and we need to pause on a regular basis and be reminded of it.
Thanks everyone for joining. Dan, could you remind us when your procedure is?
The first part of the event is Wednesday morning at 7 a.m. I will have a central line placed. And as the coordinator said, if we have a room for you, then we'll put you in a room. And I thought, well, I'm coming and have known for a while. So I requested a room with a view, and she just laughed because she said this building was built, but the only views you have are of other buildings. The day one, they'll kill all my white blood cells and theoretically all of the myeloma cells that are there as well. And then day two, I'll get my stored cells back. And then for the rest of the days, it's just monitoring how well those cells have migrated back to my bone marrow and have started making white cells again. And that can take up to 21 days. So I should be available by phone and by text and by email. And Carly says, yeah, people bring in their PlayStations too and hook them up to the TV. The gamers.
Let's hold Dan in God's light and love this week. he goes on a big adventure, and thanks everyone for joining today. It was good to see you all, and have a blessed week.
Bye.